Welcome to Friday, TGIF. Yes, it's August 1st, 2025. Hard to believe it's August. This weather update brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, the monsoonal moisture plume, which has kept the weather very active in many areas, is going to move slightly east today and more so over the upcoming weekend. Before we get to that, we will talk briefly about Delta Flight 56. This is the one that got involved in some severe turbulence injuries, had to reroute the flight. That happened right over the Central Rockies, right over Wyoming. We'll show you where and maybe why there was so much turbulence. Now, the monsoonal moisture surge does shift east over the weekend, and the monsoon moisture door closes for some. It's going to stay open for some of you, closed for others. All depends on where you are. Then we see that opening again towards the middle to the end of next week as high pressure kind of shifts west, then it shifts east, opening and closing that door. Now, as we get into the middle of next week, while temperatures are going to be over a lot of the nation, relatively cool for August over the next few days, the middle to the end of next week may bring some summer heat to the western United States, maybe even California and the west, far west, which hasn't had much heat this summer season. Now, I don't have any folklore for hummingbirds and a sign or a harbinger of maybe a big winter coming. I don't know, but take a look at those. If anybody has any folklore with hummingbirds, let me know. Wow. When we take a look at how yesterday evolved, just like all the other days, this is from Utah in the drier air, but still some high and mid-level moisture coming on through. We need that lower level moisture to bring Utah some badly needed rain. But it's all been along and east of the divide. And this is something I will touch on next week. Early next week, I'm going to kind of examine precipitation patterns that we have seen in the west really since late May up to present and kind of explain how things have evolved. But lots of moisture, as we can see over the last few days across the Central Rockies, along and near the divide and east of the divide, especially as witnessed by these photos here. Nice rainbow out of Hot Springs County, Wyoming, between some of these showers and thunderstorms. And then for parts of southeastern Wyoming and the Front Range of Colorado, a lot of hail, unfortunately, yesterday with some of the thunderstorms, a lot of very, very heavy rain. Peter sent us some photos earlier this summer about hail netting and its effectiveness. Well, nothing like a good old test of hail effectiveness with these netting setups like Peter's put together here. And you can see the proof is in the pudding here. You can see what happens on the left where you don't have hail netting. It looks like a shredder, especially with the very tender plants like you have with squash there. Then you put it under the netting and everything looks just fine. Look at that beautiful yellow squash there. So hail netting, a wonderful tool of gardeners, because trying to garden in this part of the world, as we know, is sometimes extremely frustrating. As that thunderstorm pattern built up and headed east, we did have some localized flooding, very, very heavy rain. You can see up there filling up that low-lying area. Many areas picking up a half inch, inch and a half of rain or more with some of these thunderstorms yesterday. Great shot over on Fremont Lake. Now, as you got into areas west of the divide, the thunderstorms built up, but that drier air meant lots of sprinkles, a lot of wind, and not too much rain the further west you were. Now, I want to point out, thanks to Sam for putting this and bringing this to my attention as maybe something to look at. If we take a look at Delta 56, Wednesday, late afternoon and evening. Now, Mountain Time, you can see on the timestamp here. Now, this is in what we call UTC time. Subtract 6 hours from that. So this is 5:23:50 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. So to give you reference, here's Rawlins. Here's Rock Springs, Delta Flight 56. What I want to show you here is on the left side. If you want to find out where Delta 56 got into problems, we go to flight trackers. This is Flight Radar 24. Now, the cruising altitude just before this happened was right at 37,000 feet. They attained that just before getting to that Interstate 80 corridor right here. They got to basically what we would call the cruising altitude. That's why the food and drink service started, because they got the cruising altitude. But not long after crossing Interstate 80 and getting to here, look at the vertical speed. Now take this with a bit of a grain of salt, because this is instantaneous readings from the ADS-B on the airplane, which is giving the speed, the altitude, and its location. But this is where it ran into trouble, just northwest of Rawlins. And if you look at when it happened, right around this time period, so this is this means 1,600 feet per minute. That is a significant and jolting drop. And then if we look a little bit further along the path, we have nearly a 2,000 foot or more. There were some data points that had more than that of a fall. And also we had some data points of strong vertical rises. So basically, it all happened north of Wamsutter, northwest of Rawlins, very, very quickly. Now, as they got up closer to Casper, the flight leveled out, and we didn't see nearly the turbulence after that as they headed on to Minneapolis. So you may wonder, what was the weather like? Well, I went back and I pulled a radar image. So, point of reference, here's Rawlins, here's Rock Springs, so here's Casper. So this is extremely close, a radar image out of the Riverton radar at that particular time. So the flight, Delta 56, was trying to traverse and getting over these thunderstorms right here. Now, this happens every day in the summer, all across the country. You get these situations. Does getting yourself in a situation like this guarantee what happened with Delta 56? No, it doesn't. But we had a lot of thunderstorm activity, and the thing that we tend to forget about and isn't really well communicated to people is we tend to look at weather horizontally. We tend to look at weather maps that are in 2 dimensions. It makes sense. I'm showing you a 2-dimension map. What we don't see is the 3-dimensionality of the weather situation, to where these thunderstorms are not only causing weather on a horizontal plane, but they're causing a lot of downward motion. They're causing a lot of vertical motions of the atmosphere. The atmosphere is constantly not only moving horizontally, but it's also moving up and down. And in these thunderstorm complexes, like we see, where there's multiple thunderstorms, you can sometimes have updrafts and downdrafts kind of sync, kind of work together over a large area. Now, 37,000 feet is pretty high, but it was not high enough. And remember, they plan these altitudes for air traffic to organize things. So what happened in this situation is we had a vertical situation where the air was vertically moving down and up 1 to 2 to 3,000 feet a minute, probably, and the airplane traversed the area just at the wrong place and time. This is why, especially this time of year, do not take your seatbelt off. There's just no reason to, and that's what gets people into trouble. Even though the flight planners might say we're not expecting turbulence, or the flight ahead of Delta 56 did not experience any turbulence, thunderstorms are just going to create their own weather with little or no warning. So yes, there was plenty of weather and lots of strong thunderstorm activity that Delta 56 had to go through. So going back to where we are right now, the high is beginning to shift westward. This is where the door is going to get closed a little bit, but when we look at the moisture, we can see the ring. Wow, we've had this all week, this ring of moisture, and that's where the showers and thunderstorms have formed during the day here, then at night and the evening, they head out to the east. So that subtropical moisture ring still showing up today, although the orange is advancing ever so slowly to the east, and that advancement of dry air is what's going to be taking place over the next several days. But over this arch and near this arch where it's white and green, you're going to get the showers and thunderstorms forming today, and that's where they're going to be rain producers. And we're also looking at a lot of coolness over a lot of the lower 48 relative to the 30-year average here on August 1st. So there's your ring. Notice in the cooler air, the drier, more stable air, nothing with thunderstorms. But boy, around that ring of moisture, you can see where the shower and thunderstorm activity is going to be. So very similar location for thunderstorms just more of a slightward east push, and that's where the slight risk of severe weather is today. It's been right along the Continental Divide for the last 3 days. Now it's shifting eastward, but there's still going to be thunderstorms, and unfortunately, there's going to be a hail risk again today, especially in those darker green and yellow shaded areas. As we step through the weekend, that ring is still evident right here. Really quite amazing. Look at all that dry air in the Great Lakes in the northeast, making for some very pleasant weather. Showers and thunderstorms around that ring Saturday, basically in the same areas. As we go into Sunday, there's a bit more of an eastward shift as that dry air punch gets going a little bit more. So it's going to suppress the thunderstorms in the southwestern United States. We're going to still have this narrow band north-south of thunderstorms developing there. As we take a look at next week, this is by next Wednesday. The high begins to shift east. This is what we talked about, the door opening up again. So right around the mid to the end of next week, thunderstorm activity will get going again, especially in Arizona, maybe even parts of the Four Corners area. We'll just have to watch and see that. That could evolve towards the middle to the end of next week. But later this weekend, really start Sunday into Monday and Tuesday, drier air comes in, and we start to see some heat building in the west. As you can see here, warmer temperatures start to come back on in with that high pressure expanding and growing. Have yourself a great Friday and a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.